Good afternoon, my friends. The doctor is in the house. Welcome back to another episode of To Your Health with Dr. G. I'm your host of the show, Dr. Mark Gomez, board-certified internal medicine physician out of Edward Hospital in Naperville, Illinois. So welcome back, everybody. I am so excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today. Today is the last part of my Countdown to Summer series. And really what we've been doing over the last 4 weeks is we've been talking about ways to inspire health and well-being as we get ready for summer. And as we get ready for summer, we're going to be doing so many things with our families, our friends, and our loved ones. And health has to be at the center of that. And so what we're going to do today, of course, we're going to conclude this series, but with a really, really great show. I'm excited to have some esteemed guests today. And we're going to talk about food, everybody. So the title of today's show is Countdown to Summer Part 4, Healthy Eats. Again, my name is Dr. Mark Gomez. Check me out on Facebook as well as Instagram and Twitter. My handle is @ToYourHealthDrG. Again, today we're going to have a great show. Our platinum sponsor today is Midwest Sports Medicine. Check them out at www.gomidwestsports.com. And again, what we're going to talk about today is really about nutrition. When I think about nutrition and certainly healthy eating, we want to talk about this. You can still have the tastiness factor while still having nutrition. A lot of times when we think about how we approach things in our health, especially as far as food, we tend to think about tasty first and nutrition maybe a distant second. But we're going to talk today about how you can have it both. We're going to talk about today about inspiring ways that you can continue to do good things with your family, and your friends and your loved ones, while still keeping the tasty factor at an all-time high level, as well as keeping the nutrition factor there. Because here's the reality. When it comes down to nutrition, it really represents the foundational resources, the raw materials our bodies need to optimally function. So I'm really excited today to welcome the panel here today. But before we get started, let me hit you with a quick disclaimer as usual. The content of To Your Health with Dr. G is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and that the content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, and/or treatment. Further details can be found at www.toyourhealthwithdrg.com/disclaimer. So before we get into our guests today, well, we're really going to be talking about food and just fun things. Again, summertime is fun. So what we're going to do is talk about ways to really inspire nutrition, but also really at the end of the day, inspiring health and longevity. So, for those that are new to the program, let me tell you how it works. What I do each week is I have some of my esteemed guests, and we talk about a topic. For those of you that have been following the show, first of all, thank you. And we got a really dynamic panel today. So we're going to get right into this dynamic panel today. So let me start out by introducing my first guest. My first guest, I've known her for a long time, and we go back to our days working at Edward Hospital for a number of years, and this particular guest, she's seen a ton of my patients over the years, but really inspiring health and well-being. And I really think that the important is when you talk about working on your health, it's really important to have a dynamic team working for you. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Toni Havala. She is a weight loss clinic dietitian, Edward Weight Loss Clinic, Edward Elmhurst Healthcare. She has a ton of pedigree and degrees to her name and her experience. You can check out Toni at www.eehealth.org. Welcome to the show, Toni.
Thank you so much.
All right, Toni, why don't we do this? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you became a nutritionist and dietitian, kind of where you did your training, and what's maybe some of your initial thoughts on how to make healthy nutrition work?
So I actually ended up at college at Michigan State, and a roommate of mine was exceptionally healthy. I went blind, and I was at that time gaining my freshman 30 or 40, and she was doing awesome, and I was living, I think, on pizza and caffeine while she was eating super healthfully. So I decided I needed to learn how to do that as well, and I took a nutrition class, and it changed my world. I felt better. I started exercising. I didn't come from a background where I knew a lot about nutrition, and I'm just so thankful that our paths crossed and that changed my journey. After my undergrad at Michigan State, I did an internship. We all have to do internships to be registered dietitians. So I did an internship in Minnesota, continued to work there, then went on and get my master's there. All registered dietitians are required to have an undergraduate degree and an internship as part of their background. And in terms of healthy eating, I mean, honestly, it's changed my life. It's changed my patients, clients' lives. It's just such a fabulous job to have, to see people take this journey towards healthy eating.
Thank you, Toni. It's an interesting story. I was sharing with Toni before we got on the air today that I see Toni every now and then at networking meetings, and the networking meetings happen to be dinner most of the time. So most recently, we were at a networking meeting a few weeks ago, and I sat across from Toni at dinner, and I was looking at her plate, and I kind of looked at the offerings that they were offering us for dinner. I go, wow, I got to step my game up and make sure I'm following what Toni's doing and not necessarily going by my eyes or my stomach. But thank you again, Toni, for coming out. My next guest, he and I recently connected a few months back, and when I was planning this show for healthy eating, I had to incorporate not only obviously a dietitian and in my medical background, but I had to incorporate some of my chef colleagues that are out there because they are really helping drive the change in culture. And the reality is that even with some of the drive and change in culture, there's also a change in health. And so our chefs this day and age, now more than ever, have to continue to be flexible to cater to a palate that may not necessarily be a traditional palate. So you're looking at people that have food allergies, how do you prepare around that? People that have other kind of conditions, diabetes, hypertension, things like that. And so chefs, I have tremendous respect for, not only because the food's so tasty and anybody can cook better than I could cook, but they've really had to kind of evolve their approaches to continue to help the discerning palate. So I want to welcome my next guest, Mr. Lamar Moore. He's a chef consultant, executive chef. You can check him out on Twitter at Lamar J. Moore. And also at Instagram at chef_LJM. Chef Moore, welcome to the show, and please tell us about a little bit about your background, how you got into the profession that you're in.
First, thank you for having me. As far as background, this kind of fits into, especially from healthy eating. I grew up around my grandmother who cooked for me and my family when I was a kid. So I was a little fat chubby kid that just sat on the counter eating all the food, and you know, a lot of biscuits and gravy, a lot of sausage and eggs, a lot of shrimp and grits. So, you know, when we talk about trying to eat healthy, it's kind of difficult doing that because it's what you eat all the time. And, you know, my grandmother took care of a lot of people. She took care of a lot of sick people in the hospitals too. So, you know, it was kind of a catch-22 because, you know, I love eating, I love cooking, and, you know, she pushed me to go to culinary school. I went to Le Cordon Bleu in 2002, 2003. I lived in California, worked in California for 10 years, so it kind of changed the way I ate and also cooked, even though I had a heavy steak and seafood background. I cooked at a Peruvian restaurant here in Chicago called Tanta, which, you know, the origin of a lot of our vegetables come from Peru, not knowing that until I started stepping into, you know, that realm. I was a chef for Cooper's Hawk Wine and Restaurants. Most recently, I took over a restaurant in a underserved neighborhood called Currency Exchange Cafe, which is really fits a lot of my background from growing up as a Southern kid and making, again, shrimp and grits and cheesy biscuits. I also worked for McCormick and Schmick's for 10 years at that time in California too. So, you know, we talk about, again, eating steak and seafood, you know, that was kind of the way to my heart. But that's a small synopsis of, you know, a lot of where my cooking has come from, but definitely family, grandmother and friends, and, you know, growing up with, like, eating a lot of high cholesterol foods, so.
Well, thank you, Chef Moore. And I always find it interesting, you know, there's always a reason. Somebody goes from point A to point B for some reason in life. And of course, point A to point B in your life is not necessarily a straight line. Sometimes we kind of go all zigzaggy in every which way to get to where we want to get to in life. So thank you for sharing your story, Chef Moore. And we're going to talk more in a little bit. I want to introduce my last guest, and I'm really excited to welcome her here. I actually made the connection with our last guest through my wife, who is a University of Chicago alum, and I'm giving props out to University of Chicago right now when I should be giving out props to Washington University in St. Louis, my alma mater, or Loyola, my medical school alma mater. But again, I'm glad that my wife was able to help make the connection with this last guest. So I want to welcome to the show, of course, Chef Nicole Jordan-Reed, owner and chef at Nicole Jordan Catering LLC. Check her out, www.njcaters.com. Welcome to the show, Chef Jordan. Please tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into this profession. Did you go from point A to point B? But tell us about a little bit about your background, and then tell us a little bit about maybe your initial thoughts on healthy eating.
Okay. Thank you for having me today. In terms of my path here, it's definitely not an A to B. It's kind of like A, Z, X, S. As you mentioned, I am an undergrad. I went to undergrad at the University of Chicago, studied economics some moons ago, and did a life of consulting and corporate and being in corporate America as a project manager, implementer, product manager around the HR space. So did a lot of work there. But about 13 years ago, instead of going to business school, much to my mom's chagrin, I decided to go to culinary school. I've always had a love of cooking. My grandmother actually was a cook for the Knickerbocker Hotel for 30 years.
Wow.
So I think I get it honest. But I've always had a love. I've always been surrounded by lots of great cooks, lots of great food. So I went to culinary school and decided I wanted to go that path, but as an entrepreneur. But it took me a little time. The trappings of corporate life and consulting kind of keep you a little bonded until 2016 when I left altogether and began running Nicole Jordan Catering full time. And we've been on the run ever since, doing full service catering. We do specialize in a lot of healthy eating, a lot of twists on things that are very common and popular with our twist, but also with a healthier spin. And just for me personally, I've always enjoyed food, and I have my own personal love-hate affair in terms of healthy eating. But you know, I do try to balance that a little bit. It's a little harder being an entrepreneur and working for others, but you know, still trying to stay on top of it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chef Jordan, for giving us a little more of your insight on some of your passions and how you got to this point in life. And really what we're going to do today is we're trying to make it fun. Obviously, it's always fun. Don't get me wrong with that one. Everything is always fun on this show. But really what we got some surprise for everybody today is actually I've asked both our chefs to bring 2 dishes each. And we're going to talk about them in a little bit, just to kind of whet the appetite, no pun intended, since we're talking about food. But again, I'm really grateful for this panel to be here. And really, when I think about nutrition as a physician, certainly as a primary care physician, I think of it focused around behaviors. But I want really nutrition to be on the same level as when people go and see their doctor, or people choose not to smoke cigarettes and limit alcohol intake, or people choose to engage in regular physical activity, or people apply education and lifestyle techniques to their daily approach. So we want to have nutrition really be on that same level. Hey, you go get your physical once a year. Hey, why don't we continue to still work on nutrition? But again, behaviors evolve over time, and a lot of times we are confronted with different things that may make our behaviors change. And again, the body sometimes doesn't like change, and sometimes we may regress when we are faced with change. But at the end of the day, we're going to talk today about how we can really make things work. So I'm really excited again. And I will say this, before we get into some of the questions, I will say that optimizing nutrition has to be personalized to the needs and goals of that individual. So I want to ask the first question for Toni. Toni, when you think of summertime foods, because we're talking about summertime, when you think about summertime foods, what instantly comes to mind for you? Summertime, food, what comes to mind?
Produce, farmers markets, the beautiful bounty of all these different fruits and vegetables that are fresh. We have such a limited season for us to eat fresh foods, and so this is our opportunity to really take advantage of that.
Thank you. Chef Moore, when you think of summertime, what comes to mind? And it's okay if you want to say barbecue like me, hamburgers and hot dogs, but what comes to mind when you think about summertime?
First thing that comes to mind for me is barbecue. So
All right.
I was there. Barbecue and bourbon for me, so.
And Chef Jordan, what comes to mind when you think about summertime and food?
Definitely barbecue, but also the fresh vegetables, fresh fruit. Strawberries come to mind because I love going to the strawberry patch at this time of the year, right into the entry of summer.
That is excellent. Again, I think about cookouts, wedding season, birthday parties, just getting outdoors, watermelon, but again, spending a lot of time with family and loved ones. I think about family reunions. I'm actually going to a family reunion next month outside of Memphis, Tennessee, and yeah, there's going to be probably some really good food that I may or may not should be eating, Toni, at that time, but that's all right, but we can still make health work and again, make family work and make food work. So let me ask the next question to Toni. Toni, how do you kind of give us a little bit into your day to day? How do you incorporate the theme of healthy eating into your daily interaction with patients or clients?
So what I like to do is get a feel for their current lifestyle. What are their goals? What's their schedule? What are their food preferences? What do they like? What do they dislike? And working from that, try to tailor what they like, but move them forward a step. I look at change as a layering process, not trying to tackle it all at once, but perhaps if they snack at night, how can we reduce that? Or if they're skipping breakfast every day, how can we make that happen? Do you need something fast? Let's talk about that. So it's really about picking one or two impactful goals and starting there, and then moving forward with each month or each session.
Thank you, Toni. Actually, can I ask you a follow-up question? Because I want to actually take a step back. What is the role of what does a dietitian do? How is a dietitian incorporated into the overall medical team or health planning of a particular patient?
It's been exciting for me to take this journey, have this career for a while, because it's entirely changed. I feel very integral to my healthcare team, and they really incorporate me in that care of the patient. Working at a weight loss clinic, of course, it's really important. So where I have the time, I have an hour to spend with patients. So I'm able to really dive deep, where 15 minutes for a physician, if that doesn't provide you that opportunity to delve that deep. So I can delve a little deeper, I can be a little more specific about my recommendations and resources. So it's a lot of back and forth, we're a team, and that's the fun part for me.
I think that's a good point that you made, and I certainly say from a physician standpoint, a lot of times in medical school we don't get a lot of nutrition training. It's very generalized. So I'm glad, at least when I look at things, I send patients your way because I know you can spend a little more time than I can, but certainly you have more specific recommendations. I can say, generally speaking, right, these are your macronutrients that you want to focus on, but you can kind of delve into that granular level, which is what I really appreciate about that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it really helps rather than to be given a food pyramid to say, okay, this might be a great meal for you, 2 eggs and some fruit or something, rather than saying you need protein and produce. Be specific.
Got to be specific, and that's the only way that when we talk about education, that's a big theme of my show, is really allowing people to get those resources so they can have equity when they're talking about their healthcare. And that's what we want at the end of the day. We want people to be able to take advantage of resources. If those resources aren't there, we're going to try to find ways for people to get those resources. Let me ask the next question to Chef Moore, and this is maybe more of a kind of a philosophical question for you, not necessarily related to some of the dishes, we're going to talk about that in a bit, but what's your thought on how do we engage our communities? How do we maybe create urgency in our communities when it comes to healthy eating?
Well, the first thing engaging our communities is being able to, one, create farmers markets. It's funny you actually asked that question. I was a part of a culinary incubation program in Gary, Indiana, which is a really, really underserved area. And the purpose of that program was to be able to reach out to the community and find out what was needed. And one of the first things that we saw was that, one, it was a high area for senior citizens, and they didn't have any places to really go and eat. In downtown Gary, they had no restaurants that even had a liquor license or a restaurant for people to go and dine in, so that was number 2. The third piece of that is that I visited a lot of the stores, and so when we're talking about engaging our communities, I looked at a lot of the product that was in the store, and to me it's unacceptable to say that we want our communities to eat better and eat healthier when there was nothing to provide. So it took, you know, persons like myself as chefs, as a chef and other chefs and restaurateurs to create demo opportunities to be able to teach people about product, about cooking, as we'll talk about a few of these dishes that we all have here, you know, later on today, and be able to explain why we cook them, to show how to cook. I did an actual breakdown of a wild salmon in front of 30 people and explain the nutritional value behind salmon, because I'm a salmon eater and I enjoy salmon, the reason why I kept the skin on or skin off, and then talk about more of the nutritional value behind that, because growing up as a kid, I mean, the salmon we ate was always Atlantic salmon. You know, again, I tell you, my background was steak and seafood, so being able to not only fish for a lot of the salmon myself, you know, working with a lot of, you know, close purveyors and teaching, you know, what's the reason behind the wild salmon versus the Atlantic, and then also talking about where to shop for those things. And imagine, you know, you growing up with your family, you don't have a lot of money, as a lot of us grew up, you know, with not much money, and then you don't know where to go shop for certain items. So it's a little bit easier to say, oh, well, there's a store here, but if you go in that store, if you don't know what you're looking for, and if it's not in your price range, you're just going to walk out, or you're going to buy what you're used to.
You're really alluding to the concept of what we call food deserts, and where we're out, some of us have the benefits of having kind of more like a food oasis, where there's just plenty of resources of healthy eating options. And it's hard when you go into some of these communities that, you know, hey, the only thing that they have is a corner store, which may not have any kind of fresh produce at all, maybe a lot of highly processed foods, but that is the only thing that the community has. But these are real barriers, because when you're looking at a lot of different communities, you're seeing things like diabetes going on the rise, heart disease going on the rise, high blood pressure on the rise, and other health conditions, but people don't have an equal playing field to even get their foot in the door. And it makes it really challenging for me as a primary care doctor when I see a lot of that chronic disease because of some lack of opportunity. But it's really inspiring to hear some of those stories about people do care to try to break down some barriers and get out there and try to level it and create access while creating equity at the same time. Chef Jordan, what's your take on how do we kind of create more urgency in those communities that really need it for healthy eating? Because we know that healthy eating will lead to so many other benefits. How do we create that urgency from your perspective?
Well, I think working with our youth, coming from my consulting background, I'm a big believer in managing up. And working with kids is a great way to influence our adults. And I've done some of that with Young Women's Leadership Charter School in years past, as well as working with some other organizations, and most recently with Pilot Light, where we go into the schools, talking with kids, introducing children to different things, spins on things that they are accustomed to, new frontier in food, to really broaden that horizon and then be really a champion in their own homes, and starting with really more kind of that kind of groundswell, which has seemed to be, you know, successful in with those kind of efforts. But I think that that's very, you know, really influencing our youth early, so that they can then start to carry these things and bring them to their siblings, to their parents, to their grandparents, and asking for at the apple in the grocery store as opposed to the candy bar. But I think that's one of the ways, and which is a way that for me has been something that's been near and dear to me in working with young people.
Excellent.
In our communities.
I remember when I was growing up, I'm a child of the 80s, and it wasn't actually till, I guess, when I was doing some research for the show, I actually thought that the U.S. food pyramid came out in the 80s, but I guess it came out in 1992, but the original model came out in Europe in 1974. And it was interesting because I think, like, if I had that exposure as a kid where somebody comes to my school and dressed up as a human pyramid with food on, fake food on them, I actually think that'd be pretty cool. But apparently that wasn't until the early 90s when the U.S. Department of Agriculture really developed that first food pyramid model. So actually I want to transition that into, I want to ask Toni this question. Can you kind of take us through how the food pyramid has evolved over the years? Because it's not, in its current form, it wasn't how it was when it was first introduced back in the day. So why don't we start by just saying, for those out there that don't know what it is, what is the food pyramid?
So the food pyramid was a teaching tool used by the USDA to help people learn how to eat properly. And it actually had background way into the World War II in the 40s, where they came up with the 7 basic food groups. At that time, it was 7 food groups, one of them being butter and margarine. That was a food group.
Yum. Delicious.
Yes, it's evolved since then, thank goodness. They then went down to 4 basic food groups, which were protein, fruits and vegetables, and dairies and grains. So that made a little more sense. And then the idea to teach nutrition through the food pyramid did come about in 1992. And it was stacked. The whitest part on the bottom was to represent what you had most of, or what you should be having most of. And at that time, it was grains. So it's evolved a lot. You were supposed to have 6 to 11 servings of bread or rice or pasta a day. So things have changed. We've learned a lot, and so now they don't use the pyramid at all anymore. In 2011, they came out with a plate. And so that's the teaching tool, which I think, again, is much more tangible to people than the pyramid. So the plate is divided up into 4 sections: protein, fruits, vegetables, and starch or grains. And the fruits and vegetables are the half of the plate now, rather than grains being the foundation for the diet. Grains have been allocated 1/4 of the plate, so it's all switched.
It's amazing on that evolution, because probably in 1992, when I was just entering high school at that time, and I saw that food pyramid, and I'm thinking, breads, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, yes, pizza all the time, bagels, bread, Hawaiian rolls, all that kind of fun stuff. But it's amazing. But this is the reality. We have to evolve, and the science has evolved behind it. But that's what if you don't know any better, that's all you really know. But we have to kind of go through things and see how health and science evolves to now make recommendations. If we did not evolve as a people or as a society, we'd be in a worse off situation. So that's very interesting in that historical context. And it's interesting that you said about the World War II, because you're right. Doing some from a historical standpoint, I believe when they even came up with the idea of RDAs, they really looked at it from really how can we do it as far as defense, providing optimal nutrition not only for our military but also for our civilians at that time. And certainly even at that time, there was even a lot of rationing of food going on in World War II. So you really want to say we're going to be superior as far as our nutrients as a society. But it's amazing how it's evolved over the years.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a follow-up question, Toni. How do you think we're doing as a society? And I probably already know the answer, but since it's evolved in 2011 with the My Plate, how do you think we're doing, just generally speaking, as a society in hitting those kind of targets?
In terms of eating, we've got a ways to go, but I do see improvement in the overall knowledge. Kids don't drink soda as much. I'm so surprised when I see kids and they don't have friends that drink soda. They're not drinking soda. It's not as cool. So that works. So I do see some sort of improvements. I think overall nutrition is a topic that almost everyone's had a discussion about or thought about or read about, where I don't think that was the case, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. So I do believe people are interested in it. I think people are still confused about it. I think there's a lot of static, a lot of information out there that is confusing, and I think right now that's more of my struggle is the conflicting information that's out there because of the incredibly corporate America is very interested in nutrition and weight loss, and so there's a lot of people out there with very extreme views. So that's more of my struggle now than I ever had before in my career.
I want to ask Chef Moore this question. It's interesting how we've seen the evolution, and certainly food has evolved over time, and really trying to focus on some of the nutrients. So, obviously we're seeing a lot of the commercialized approach towards nutrition with instant shakes, where you can have all these vegetables dehydrated, chopped up into fine little tiny pieces, and then blend 10 superfoods together and 10 other vegetables, and then you drink it in the morning to start your day out. What's your guys' kind of takes as they kind of sort of more or less deconstruct food as a whole and try to pack it in a bottle? Does that really gel well with you as a chef, or how would you use that maybe in addition as to what you're trying to accomplish by having people eat healthy?
First, I wouldn't use it at all. I feel like if I'm going to ask the guest to pay for something, it is my duty as a chef and as a person to stay as natural as possible. And if I'm not going that route, then what's the point? Because if that's the case, then everyone can just stay at home and do that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, I want to have people eat something I would enjoy eating. And that's like standing behind a product very, very well. And my job is to create and to inspire. And, I know a lot of companies, they're doing that, but I feel like now the cooking, I grew up watching my grandmother cook, and now we're like taking them out of their homes and making everything so simplified, because now the rule is, oh, well, no one has enough time. Well, at a certain point, there has to be enough time in order to make it right. Otherwise, and that's the case, then we'll all be eating what Medivacs that they have in the military, which just sounds like a lot of what we're gearing to. I mean, look at these instant, energy shots now that you can mix with drinks and stuff like that. And I think that, to Chef's point here about, growing with children, at a certain point, if we're teaching our children that same model, they're going to grow up the same way. I grew up around my grandmother cooking, so now I want to inspire kids and adults to do the same thing. So, at a certain point, we have to be able to, back to your point, knowing what's fictional or not, based off of what your health reasons want to be at and what you see suitable when you go to the store looking for a certain product.
I think you've made some really good points there, and I think of it from even another perspective, and I like where your mindset is. I think certainly about as being a parent, I don't want my kids to be just saying, here's nutrition in a bottle, and takes the whole thing out of it. And I think about, hey, I like to have my 4 and 6-year-old trying to help my wife and I try to cook something, because it gives us that time together. And you don't get time when you don't get that meaningful time when you're just doing something in a bottle real quick and then moving on. And really when it comes up to time, yes, we are all busy and we all live lives, and I know Toni sees it all the time in the clients that come to her, and I see it in my patients. You got to be intentional. If you want to make change, you have to be intentional. That's the first thing you have to decide in the morning. I'm going to be intentional in my efforts today. I'm going to try to do things for myself. And again, go back to the personalization of things. I want to ask Chef Jordan a question before we get into some of the dishes. What's your take on really kind of going from I think about taste, because that's the reality of it. When it comes down to taste, we're a taste society, but also trying to have health at the same time. How do you kind of balance the two when it comes to eating?
Wow. I think in terms of that, really utilizing fresh food, your vegetables. I love collard greens. They're one of my absolute favorites. But historically, they've gotten a bad rap because of how they've been prepared. But it's a great vegetable. Taking that and really enhancing the taste. Instead of using meat, use coconut oil. I use onion, and we saute, and you really kind of bring out all these things together to balance that healthiness and the flavor. But really looking at ways to not overshadow the natural, the naturalness, if you will, of what we're preparing, of what I'm preparing. I think that's kind of my approach in terms of letting the food speak for itself from its most natural state.
Love it. And again, the tastiness factor can be kept high, and the nutritional factor as well too. I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor today, Midwest Sports Medicine Institute. Whether competitive athlete or weekend warrior, you expect nothing but the best. Injury or chronic pain in the knee, shoulder, and other joints can be disabling and frustrating. At Midwest Sports Medicine Institute, we strive for excellence in the diagnosis, treatment, and follow-up care for your condition. If you have sustained an injury or are suffering with chronic pain, schedule a consultation with Dr. David Burt to take the first step toward relief and experience the latest advances in orthopedic and sports medicine treatment. Contact the practice today at area code 815-267-8825 or visit www.gomidwestsports.com. And again, thank you, Midwest Sports Medicine Institute, for supporting our show today. So now comes the fun part, even though this has always been fun. But it's always important to understand, every guest that I've had on the show, I always wanted to hear what gives them passion, what gives them purpose. And again, I love the story that Chef Jordan told us, how she was on one pathway and said, you know what, I'm not being necessarily fulfilled in life. And so I've gone on this pathway, and now I have that fulfillment. I believe that we all have a purpose in life, and we all ended up in our professions for that reason. But I always need to find out what drives people. what gives them emotion, what gives them the desire to wake up in the morning, what gives them hopefully the ability to change the world. I love saying that. I say that to my kids all the time. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to talk about some of these dishes because it looks tasty. And again, as we're talking about today, it's summertime eats and healthy eats during the summertime season. You can have the tasty factor and the nutritional factor on par. Contrary to what our current approaches are in our day-to-day. And we all know we should do better. Again, we know that, yes, I should probably not be doing X or Y or Z, even though I do it anyways. I shouldn't be eating ice cream for breakfast. I know I should make this choice. I know that I should eat this broccoli or this kale, but I choose to do other things. So we're talking about, again, how can we keep the tasty factor high, but just fun. And summertime is fun. We're out with our families, out with our loved ones. Let's have fun and let's stay healthy together, and let's keep that longevity going on and our vitality and our quality of life. So I'm going to start with Chef Jordan, and what I'd like her to do is, Chef, please explain the two dishes that you prepared today, just kind of what they are, what kind of ingredients you used, and what kind of inspired you to make that kind of dish.
Okay. So the two dishes I have in front of me, the first one is our shrimp and watermelon skewers. It's a cilantro and lime marinated shrimp with watermelon. And that is something I enjoy. I love watermelon. I love seafood. And all the flavors of cilantro and lime really complement, almost kind of ceviche-like. But on a skewer, and then you have the sweetness of the watermelon, so you really kind of get a nice balance. You have your tart and the lime and the cilantro to really bring out those flavors. So I actually started making this for clients about, I think, last summer. I was looking at adding some new things to our menu, and started playing around and came up with this, and it's been kind of on our roster 2 summers ago, and it's been on our menu. It comes out in the summer, and it's really nice. It's refreshing. It's cool, and it's a great addition to like a barbecue without having barbecue.
Chef, let me ask you this question: how easy would this be to prepare for somebody?
Oh, it's super easy. I mean, you can buy shrimp. You can get a nice watermelon, and if you're not into cubing a full watermelon, you can buy watermelon portions. Cut it up really nicely. You can make a very easy vinaigrette with lime. Use a little bit of oil, like olive oil or even a canola, and then fresh cilantro, and whip that up. And you can marinate your shrimp. Actually, pre-cook the shrimp a little bit, and then let it marinate for a little while in the dressing. Or if you could find a really great store-bought dressing to expedite the process, you can. There are a few that are not so egregious on the market that you can use as well. And it really takes, it's half hour tops to put everything together. So it's very easy, and it's a no cook. It's a semi no cook, except for getting your shrimp just partially done.
Excellent. I want to ask Toni maybe to kind of come in and give us a little commentary on things too, because she's the resident expert here on nutrition. And first of all, Chef, I love the fact that this is something straightforward that anybody can make.
Yes.
I can't even make that. I might need help from my wife to help me out too. I mean, my kids might have to help out as well too, but something that can be easily made. So let me ask Toni this, just kind of surface level, and then we'll get into the next dish, and maybe we'll kind of go back and forth like this, which I think is great. But as you think of like shrimp, as you think of watermelon, you think of summer, what kind of nutrients are you seeing in that? What kind of, maybe some of the macronutrients, or what's your kind of take on things from a dietitian standpoint?
I think it gets like an A+ from a nutrition standpoint. The shrimp is perfect 100% lean protein, so that's fantastic. And then the watermelon has actually a lot of nutrients and not that much sugar. People think watermelon's going to have a lot of sugar, but it doesn't. A cup of watermelon has 9 grams of sugar, actually less than blueberries. So you're getting that sweetness, you're getting the hydration, that nice crunch. So it's really gets an A+. I can't wait to try it.
This is awesome. I feel like we're on, as you kind of described that, I'm thinking about those TV shows where you have the judges and they're describing the flavors that come to their mouth, and I think it's awesome. And for those of you out there that are watching it, this is a treat for sure. For those of you that are actually listening to us and don't have actually the video to watch us, you're just gonna have to just take our word on it, and just from the sound bites alone, that this is something that looks amazing. Chef, why don't you go ahead and explain your second dish to us?
So summertime for me, growing up in Chicago, and even as an adult now, I love elotes, and a lot of my friends love elotes, which is corn, which is mixed with a little bit of mayo and butter and cotija cheese and cilantro and lime, and it's all kind of deliciousness, a little bit on the fattening side with all of the additions, embellishments to the corn. And so what I started doing actually last summer is I enjoy elotes, but I was looking for something a little lighter, and one for me, but also then it translated into dishes for summertime cookouts for customers. And instead of doing it in the cups, which is traditionally how elotes is served, is cups layered in with all of the other ingredients, we went with a salad base. So we lightened up the dressing, use some corn. You can use fresh corn, or you can actually buy really great frozen corn. They have like the fire roasted, as opposed to just canned corn, a good frozen product that you can cook lightly in the oven to unthaw, mix with your dressing. We like to do a combo of mayo and chipotle mayo to give a little kick, but we use a little bit less. The cheese, fresh cilantro, and a little bit of spice. Not too much heavy cayenne, but maybe a little bit of Aleppo pepper, which has a medium spice, something more medium heat that gives you a kick, but doesn't overwhelm the palate as well. And so started to make that, and it's really tasty, and it's a lot less taxing on the body. And one of the great things about it is, we put no additional salt into the salad. The corn, you want the sweetness of the corn, you have the lime working, kind of playing on that sweetness, and then the cheese, kind of its nutty saltiness as well. So, you really don't even need a lot of salt or any other than what's in the natural, ingredients, or naturally in the ingredients that it's composed of.
And Chef, why don't you tell us just how long of kind of prep time it would take to do something like this?
Total time, really, probably up to 45 minutes, and that's a lapse. So, to get your corn cooked and cooled, but then to make the dressing, really another 10, 15 minutes to put it all together, and then put it in the fridge and just let it chill.
Excellent, thank you. And Toni, why don't you give us a kind of your commentary on things
Okay.
on this particular dish?
So I was thinking as you're speaking, this is a perfect example of taking something that was kind of decadent to begin with. And not that you can't ever have decadent, but decadent's all about portion size. So if you're going to have something truly in its original state, maybe a couple bites would have been what you would have just to taste it. But now, because it's lighter, you can have a much more satisfying serving size than you would have had before. And corn actually has some fiber to it, so there is some nutritional value. Corn's kind of taking a little bit of a bashing because of the high starch or carbohydrate content. But part of that carbohydrate's fiber, which is a very positive type of carbohydrate. So,
excellent. And thank you, Chef Jordan, for sharing with us your dishes. And again, for those that are listening, it doesn't do it justice just to listen to the show. Those that are watching, it's like, hey, the tastiness factor is through the roof. So I want to now have Chef Moore explain his dishes. And Chef, please tell us a little bit more about your first dish and tell some of the inspiration behind it and some of the ingredients. Please go right ahead.
I'll start with the one on the right. Is my take on tacos, but instead of tortilla, I use tomatoes. One, it's just slightly healthier, and we do talk about, from a cost standpoint too. I mean, tomatoes are cheaper than tortillas in some aspects, even here in Chicago. So I took Roma tomatoes, which are a little bit sweeter, and I took the inside out and actually cooked it down with ground turkey, so it keeps the turkey moist. Really some store-bought taco seasoning. I like spicy, so that one's got a little kick to it. It has some shredded lettuce in the bottom, a little bit of avocado. I put avocado in everything, especially my time living in California, and avocado is like the other mayo, so it's a little bit healthier instead of having, mayo. Dollop of sour cream. I'm not a fan of sour cream, but most people like sour cream on tacos, and a little bit of shredded Mexican cheese and green onions.
Excellent. And how about the prep time that somebody might do if they were to try to do something like this?
Prep time 20 minutes. Again, the tomatoes are already store-bought. Just find nice ripe tomatoes, cut them in half. Doesn't take long to cook turkey in a skillet. My granny would say a little bit of oil in there, not much, just enough to get the turkey cooked. Add the seasoning in there. Cut shredded lettuce, or you can buy lettuce already shredded. I prefer to buy iceberg lettuce just because you don't want the brown spots in there, and it's a little bit nicer and a little bit crispier. Obviously the cheese you buy in the bag too, so pretty much just small little portions. And the other cool thing about this is you can eat it hot or cold if you wanted to. That can be almost like a taco salad, for lack of a better word, so it is very versatile too.
I just love looking at this because, again, another way to kind of play on a taco, as you said, very, very creative and using tomato as a base. That's so awesome. Toni, please give us a little commentary on that dish as you take a look at it and think about some of the nutritional components in your mind.
Well, I love it. I think I'm looking at it thinking that would be great to take to work for lunch too. How exciting would you be to have your lunch? That beats the ordinary sandwich. I think it's a nice combination. When I talk to people about weight loss, I always say every meal needs to have a protein, which is in the ground turkey, and a vegetable or fruit, a protein and produce, and that's that combination. No extra starch, so it really pares it down to what you need to be healthy and have what you need. It's so interesting way to do that rather than bringing a baked chicken breast and steamed broccoli in. So I love that take on the protein vegetable combination. I think that's great. And tomatoes and watermelon have a ton of lycopene. That's what gives it that red color. And they're doing a lot of research on the power of lycopene to prevent cancer. So another bonus.
Oh, this is great. This is again why I love chefs because I couldn't think of anything like this. But it's just another way to take it to make it healthy. And again, as you said, Chef Moore, it's like you're used to doing tacos on a tortilla. Do tacos this way. This is actually really great to have, really creative to have the tomato as the base and wrapping things around. That's wonderful. And then Chef, please explain your second dish to us.
So this second dish is actually there are three reasons why I made this dish. Well, the first one is that I have to eat healthier. So about 7 months ago, I was playing basketball. Thought I was a star and tore my ACL and my meniscus. So upon my recovery time, I gained about 30 pounds and realized from my recovery that I was putting a lot of pressure on my right leg as opposed to healing the left. So I need to eat healthier and also work out a lot more than what I used to. I'll never play basketball again. So, and then working in a Peruvian restaurant in Tanta, they use so much quinoa. And I started to find out how healthier quinoa is, and I grew up as a kid eating oatmeal, and I've used quinoa in place of oatmeal and add a little bit of milk to it and a little bit of agave. So this is my take on that. And when we talk about salmon, one of the companies I work with exclusively is schooner-based salmon based out of Vancouver. And what's great about that salmon is that it's 72 hours fresh out of the ocean. And so, and it's a wild salmon, which they sell. You'll find a lot of restaurants pretty much all over the world here in Chicago. So warm quinoa salad, fresh corn, Indiana corn, it's very local. I like spice again, so it's a little bit of jalapeno in there. More avocado, so cross-utilization of avocado to give it a little creaminess. And the salmon was simply seared. I kept skin on, high in omega-3. It also keeps the salmon moist too. If you want to eat the skin, deliciousness. If you not, take it off. Sea salt and a little bit of cracked black pepper and a touch of olive oil. Very easy.
Are there any other kind of, you mentioned green onions in there? Are there any kind of vegetable in there?
Green onions, tomato, jalapeno, and cilantro.
And what's the kind of prep time, the total cooking time it would take for somebody if they wanted to try to do something like this?
Total prep and cook, hour and a half. Or if you know you're going to cook this item the next day, because the quinoa needs to be soaked the day before just to rinse out all the dirt from the quinoa, and then it's boiled about a half an hour or so. And then chilled. I also add a little squeeze of lime in there too, just from an acid component. It goes well with the quinoa and the corn, so you get the sweetness and a little bit of acidity in the end. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing that particular dish. Toni, please give us a little commentary from your end on this particular dish.
That's a beautiful pile of healthy proteins and a little produce through it. And the quinoa has a lot of protein. It has a lot of fiber as well. So that in itself is a great protein source. Quinoa has 9 essential amino acids, and very few plants do have that. We need 9 parts of protein called amino acid that we can't get any other way but eating it. And not many plants have the right mix of them, but quinoa does. So it's perfect for someone who wants to go vegan. But I think having that fish on top for the omega-3s is just an added bonus. It's so flavorful, so I love that combination.
Thank you very much, Toni, for your commentary on that one. And again, I really thank the chefs for bringing some truly inspiring dishes to the show today, and dishes that can be made by everyday kind of people. And I just love the idea on how things have been kind of taken a little bit differently. And I'm really, I'm looking at the simplicity of the taco, the watermelon and shrimp dish, but also that I just love that idea how you substitute out a tortilla and use actually the tomato to kind of hold everything on your taco dish, Chef Moore. So that's just great stuff. So we have about 5 minutes left today, and really what I want to do as we kind of get ready to close on the show, we usually in medicine we talk about something called the assessment and plan. And for those that are new to the show and those that have been following us, really the assessment and plan is when we kind of summarize things. We're talking about today about healthy eating and healthy eats for the summertime. Again, a time of emotion and enjoyment, hopefully, and family and friends and gatherings. And we're talking about today how you can have both nutrition and tastiness at the same time, but also some of the simplicity of some dishes that the chefs have really inspired us to make. So what I'd like to do is start with Chef Jordan. Chef Jordan, why don't you give us a couple kind of take-home tips? How can people be successful with their eating during the summertime months, and not only summertime but also year-round?
Well, number one, planning. That's really the key. Planning, really being, as you mentioned earlier, having that intention of being deliberate. Coming out in the day or in the morning, the day before, pack a lunch, or buy things in more bite-size or a smaller quantity. So if you need to pack vegetables, you can buy the baby carrots. You don't necessarily have to, peel them and cut them. Buy things that are pre-cut that will help expedite the process, so that way you're not encumbered with time, but then are able to still eat properly or eat well. I think the big thing is planning, and that actually makes the difference for me, and I know it makes a difference, in others as well.
Thank you, Chef. Chef Moore, what are some couple take-home points, a couple of healthy pointers that you can give out to people on how to be successful with healthy eating?
One I think is huge is portion control, and especially from a protein standpoint. I mean, we all grew up on eating a lot of protein, and I take the homage like, a bull, for example. If you feed a bull a ton of meat, they bulk up, and sometimes we don't realize that if we kind of carry ourselves eating the same way and we bulk up a lot more than what we think, and if we interject, more fruits and vegetables in our diets and less starch, we'll find ourselves in a better position to eat better. I second the planning piece in that too. If you become more of a planner of what your items that you want to eat, it helps. And being more accurate shoppers. I think especially now that, social media and online shopping now has become, the predicator. I mean, you look at Amazon and Whole Foods now, and they're pretty much taking over everything. And now you can go online and either build a recipe or see a recipe, and they'll tell you exactly where to get it, exactly how much it costs. And the other piece of that is being more cost efficient. And what I mean by that is that it's easier to say, well, I can get 128 eggs, I'm just throwing as an example, of just plain eggs for $7, but your protein and the value that you get out of it is going to be less than just buying brown eggs. The other big piece is it is so important that we give back to our local farmers, and I think that has gotten lost and missed. I mean, when I was a kid, how many times my grandmother go to a farm, we talk about collard greens. There's so many places right now here in Chicago that I can find local collard greens, being that sells to restaurants and even stores that we may not know about. And if those things are more local, more fresh, then the prices drop in our areas, especially when we talk about underserved areas and even some of the other ones. That helps a lot of our costs, and also it processes a little bit easier in our bodies.
Excellent, thank you very much. And Toni, give us a couple of take-home points for people to be successful with healthy eating.
First of all, I have to say what they said. I just feel like it would be such a joy to be able to bring you all with me to work, because to hear a chef say these things about healthy eating and planning, it would be so meaningful, and it is meaningful to me. But planning is a huge part. But as you look at this food, and as you smell it and taste it eventually, I would just, all you can say is healthy eating is not about deprivation. And the word deprivation, often it comes to people's minds when they think about eating healthfully, and that's not what it's about. It's beautiful, it's satisfying, and you're honoring your body. You feel as good or better after you eat it than before, and that's really important.
Thank you. And my final thoughts are this. Really, when it comes down to nutrition, nutrition doesn't have to be complex. And I think that's one of the great things that our guests today have really kind of hit home on the point. And nutrition is really part of a continuum of many factors that define our health and well-being. We all want to live a long time. We all want to have the vitality. We all want to have quality of life. Nutrition is just another part of that. It's part of those behaviors. And it's those behaviors that allow us to pursue positive and restorative practices in our lives to keep the mind, body, and spirit all together. So I want to thank my guests today, Chef Nicole Jordan-Reed, Chef Lamar Moore, and Dietitian Toni Havala. Also, I want to thank my platinum level sponsor today, Midwest Sports Medicine. Next week, we're going to be talking about innovations in chiropractic care. Again, my name is Dr. Mark Gomez. Check me out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at ToYourHealth.Dr.G, or check me out on my website at www.drmarkgomez.com. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you for listening. See you guys next time, and peace out.